She walked into that building every morning for 6 months wearing the same modest blazer, carrying a second-hand tote bag, sitting at a desk near the back where no one would notice her. Every colleague assumed they knew exactly who she was, and she let them believe it. But here's the thing about appearances. What you see on the surface is almost never the full story. And what she was carrying beneath that quiet, unremarkable routine was something so heavy, so carefully hidden, it had shaped every decision she'd made for the last 3 years. What would make a person with everything choose to live like they have nothing? And why would someone who had survived the cruelest kind of rejection still be searching for proof that love without condition was even possible? Sit back, relax, and let's dive in. It was a Thursday morning in late October in Atlanta. The light through the office windows of Hargrove and Lane Financial Group was that thin, pale gold that makes everything look a little more important than it is. Maya Ose arrived at 7:45, 15 minutes before anyone else, the way she always did. She liked that quiet window, the hum of the air conditioning, the faint smell of cleaning solution on the carpet. She set her bag down, turned on her monitor, and opened the first of what would be 42 emails before noon. Her colleague Daniel Reyes arrived at 8:01, coffee in hand, and noticed her the way he always did, with a careful attention she had never asked for. They had known each other for months. They ate lunch together 3 times a week. He made her laugh in ways she hadn't expected. She made him think in ways he hadn't been prepared for. But there was something he kept brushing against, a door she never fully opened. He had asked twice, gently, why she never talked about her family, never mentioned where she'd grown up, never seemed to have a home he knew anything about. She'd smiled both times, redirected, given him just enough warmth to feel close and just enough vagueness to stay at a distance. Lately, in the way she paused a half-second too long before answering simple questions, in the way her eyes sometimes went somewhere else mid-sentence, he had begun to feel the weight of something unspoken pressing between them. Something was coming. He could feel it without knowing what it was. Maya glanced at Daniel across the office floor and looked away before he could catch her looking. In the 2 years since she had started living this way, quietly, under the radar, as an ordinary employee in her family's own company, she had grown skilled at a certain kind of stillness. Out there, in her real life, she moved through boardrooms with a confidence that felt like breathing. She had delivered a 45-minute presentation to regional partners that earned a standing ovation. These were things no one in this office knew about her. But here, in the particular stillness of Daniel knowing something was off, she was not confident. She was afraid, because this was not about skill. This was about the heart, and the heart had a different record. Before Daniel, there had been Marcus, a man she'd told the truth to on their 3rd date. He'd smiled, grown very quiet, and sent a text 4 days later saying he needed more time. She never heard from him again. Before Marcus, there had been Priya, warm and generous right up until she learned the full picture, and then she spent 3 weeks trying to be something for Maya that she had never asked her to be. It always changed. When people learned who she really was, they stopped seeing her. They started seeing the other thing instead. Maya had seen this moment before. She knew, with bone-deep exhaustion, exactly how it usually ended. She suggested a walk on her lunch break. Daniel agreed. They ended up 2 blocks from the office in front of a narrow building on Clement Street that she hadn't intended to show him, not today, not yet. A converted 3-story row house, brick darkened to the color of old rust, a front door that leaned slightly inward, a cracked window patched with yellowed tape, a crumbled front step, a single plastic chair rocking in the wind. Inside, a bare bulb in the hallway, linoleum flooring from a forgotten era. Maya pulled a key from her jacket pocket, fitted it into the lock with practiced ease, and pushed the door open slowly. She turned to Daniel with a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "This is where I live," she said quietly. Daniel stood at the threshold and took it in the narrow single bed, the blanket folded too precisely, the 2-burner stove, the cabinet that wouldn't close all the way, the cardboard box beneath the table serving as a second drawer. For a moment, he said nothing. Maya watched his face the way a person watches weather, looking for the thing that comes before the storm. She saw it arrive in 3 waves. First, surprise. Second, something softer moving through his expression like a hand smoothing a wrinkle from cloth. Third, a quiet, deliberate steadiness, as if he was deciding what to do with what he was feeling. He turned to her. "How long have you been living here?" About 8 months, she said, no excuses. He looked at her differently then, not with the distance she had braced for, but with a closeness that was almost hard to look at directly. Is this why you never told me? He asked. I didn't want things to change between us. That's honest. He thought about it, imagined her here after the long office days in this small, careful space, folding her blanket with that same precision every morning. Something heavy settled in his chest. You should have told me. Why didn't you think you could? She shook her head. Were you scared I would judge you? I was scared, she said. Scared of what? She breathed once, scared of losing you. He looked at her for a long moment. Maya, he said, I have been sitting across from you for 4 months. Do you know what I've actually noticed? She waited. I noticed you always let other people finish their sentences. I noticed you bring an umbrella when the weather app says 30% chance of rain because you don't want to be caught off guard. I noticed you laugh at things that are genuinely funny and go completely quiet when something isn't. He paused. I have not once sat there thinking about your apartment. Her eyes were very still. The care I have for you is not a math problem, Maya. It doesn't add up or subtract based on addresses. He said it simply, without theater, and she realized quietly that she had been standing in the doorway of every real thing, waiting for it to close on her. And this time, it was staying open. This person was different from the others. She could feel it, and that was the most frightening thing of all. She stepped out briefly. She'd left the building key in her car 2 blocks back. Daniel said he didn't mind waiting. She walked down the block, found the key in the cup holder, allowed herself one quiet breath of cool Atlanta air, and turned back. She walked up the front step, pushed the door open. The chair was empty, the room was silent, Daniel was gone. She stood in the doorway, key in hand. Her eyes moved from the bed to the table to the open cabinet. Then the weight of it landed, full, familiar, terrible. So this is how it happens again. Then his voice, just to her left, slightly around the corner. She turned sharply. Daniel was leaning against the wall of the building next door, looking at his phone. He had stepped out to take a call from his sister. He hadn't even been gone 2 minutes. He looked up and saw her face. Hey, what's wrong? She shook her head too quickly. Nothing. Maya, I thought you left. He was quiet for a moment. You really thought I would leave because of this? She didn't answer. He stepped toward her. Do you think I am that kind of person? I don't know, she said honestly. I have seen many things in my life. He stepped close, put his hand on her arm, and said it plainly. I love you, Maya. The words didn't echo dramatically. They just sat in the air between them, warm, unhurried. She stepped into his arms slowly, as if approaching something she wasn't sure she was allowed to have. When his arms came around her, the tightness in her chest was not fear. It was something that had been waiting a long time to be let out. I'll come by this weekend, he said quietly, and we'll fix that cabinet door. She laughed into his shoulder, surprised by herself. They went back inside. She made 2 cups of tea on the 2-burner stove. They sat at the mismatched table and talked until the October sky went dark outside the cracked window, and neither of them noticed the time passing. That night, after Daniel had gone, Maya lay on her narrow bed staring at the ceiling, with one thought circling quietly beneath everything else. What will happen when Daniel finally discovers who I really am? Because here was the truth she had not told him. Maya Osai was not a mid-level accounts coordinator scraping by in a rented room in Atlanta. She was the only daughter and sole heir of Victor Osai, founder and chairman of Osa Capital Group, one of the largest private wealth management firms on the East Coast, with holdings in 4 countries and an office in Nairobi. She had grown up in a 12-room house in Buckhead. She had an MBA from Wharton. And the account she was coordinating at Hargrove and Lane. Her family owned a silent stake in the parent company. Yet here she was clocking in every morning in a second-hand blazer, eating lunch from a container she packed herself, living in a rented room with a cracked window, pretending to be ordinary. The plan had been her father's idea. A year before, Maya had come home from a broken engagement. A man named Philip who had smiled at her like she was the answer to every question he'd ever had, right up until the moment she realized he was answering a very different question, about comfort, about what her name could open. She had told her father she was done trying to find love inside her own world. Victor had said, Go find it outside it then. If someone loves you without knowing, you will know it's real. She had agreed. She had not expected it to feel like this. She had not expected Daniel. She sat up slowly. How do I tell him now? She murmured to the ceiling. If she told him the truth, he might feel betrayed. If she said nothing, the lie only grew. She picked up her phone and called the one person who always picked up. Her father answered on the second ring. I think I am in trouble, she said. I met someone. His name is Daniel. I think he loves me, but he doesn't know who I really am. The line went quiet. Then Victor spoke carefully. A hidden lie does far greater damage than a painful truth because at least truth gives the other person a choice. If this man truly loves you, he will eventually understand why you were afraid. But love cannot grow in a space where truth is constantly hiding. It becomes a ceiling. It becomes a wall. She breathed, I will tell him soon. His final words were quiet and certain. The right person will love Maya. Not the name, not the money, not the struggle, just you. The call ended. His words stayed, turning slowly in the room like something trying to find its place. And deep inside, Maya knew. Sooner or later, the truth had to come out. Weeks passed. Maya and Daniel became something that other people noticed before they fully named it themselves. One coworker said she had never seen Maya laugh before she met Daniel. Another said he had never seen Daniel show up to work looking genuinely glad to be there. But one person was not happy about it. Gerald Moss was the floor supervisor for the mid-level accounts team, a man in his mid-50s with a precisely trimmed mustache and the kind of authority that had curdled over years into resentment wearing a badge. 3 months before Maya had ever set foot in Hargrove and Lane, Gerald had asked Daniel to dinner. Daniel had declined kindly. The kindness had somehow made it worse. Now Gerald turned his attention on Maya. The first incident was small, an additional client report with a 4-hour deadline on an afternoon. She already had 2 overlapping projects. She submitted all 3 on time and said nothing. The second was less deniable. During a team meeting, he looked directly at her and announced in front of 6 colleagues that her presentation lacked the polish this firm represents. The room went still. Maya looked at him evenly and said, I appreciate the feedback. I would like to understand which specific section needs revision, and I will address it before end of day. He had no specific answer. The third incident was worse. He cornered her near the printer on a Friday afternoon, voice calibrated to carry just far enough. I have reviewed your file, and I honestly cannot see what is so special about you. You are ordinary. You are forgettable. And whatever little thing you have going with Ray's will not last, because people like you do not hold on to people like him. He said it slowly, deliberately. Then he reached out and gripped her arm hard above the elbow. The corridor went completely still. Then Daniel's voice came from the far end of the floor. He had come back for his bag. He had heard it. He walked toward them, not fast, not slow. He placed himself between Gerald and Maya without hesitating, looked at Gerald directly, and said with a calm so thorough it was almost frightening, If you touch her again, I will report this to management, HR, and every member of the board I can reach before Monday morning. Gerald stepped back, said nothing, left. Daniel turned to Maya. Are you okay? Yes, she said. But inside, the weight of the secret she was still carrying had doubled. Daniel had just defended someone he did not truly know. He had placed himself between her and harm based on an incomplete picture. And that, more than anything, made hiding the truth feel unbearable. That evening, Daniel came by her building to check on her. As they sat at the small table, she almost said it. Instead, she asked carefully, What would you do if someone you loved was hiding something important from you? He thought about it genuinely. I would feel hurt, he said slowly, but I would want to understand why they hid it. She nodded. He left an hour later. The room felt larger without him in it. She called her father briefly. I'm afraid of hurting him. You will hurt him more by waiting, Victor said simply. She slept badly. She woke the next morning resolved. Today, I will tell him today. At noon, they were outside on a bench near the building's side entrance. Real autumn arriving in Atlanta, the air finally cool. She turned to him. Daniel, there is something I need to. Gerald Moss appeared at the door of the building, face rigid. He was holding a folder pointing at her. Osei, my office. Now, you submitted falsified numbers on the Caldwell file. She had not. Daniel stood. The moment fractured, the confession dissolved. Gerald was not quiet about it. He said it again, louder in front of colleagues. He grabbed the folder and slapped it against the wall beside her head. Security came. People stopped on the pavement. Then a sound. The slow, expensive sound of vehicles with weight pulling onto the drive in front of the building. Black cars, 2 of them. Men in suits stepping out first. And then last, a man in his 60s with close-cropped silver hair and the bearing of someone who had never needed a room to quiet down before he entered it, because rooms simply did. Gerald still had his hand raised, still going unaware. The man walked forward. Senior staff near the entrance visibly shifted. One woman covered her mouth. Someone whispered, not quietly enough, "That's Victor Osa." The chairman of Osai Capital Group walked directly toward the scene. He stopped. He spoke once in a voice that needed no volume to carry. "Maya, what is going on here?" The entire space went silent. Gerald's hand dropped. Daniel turned slowly. Everyone turned. Victor's gaze moved to Gerald with the full, calibrated weight of a man who had built something from nothing and protected it for 30 years. "No employee in this company should be treated with disrespect, whether they are my daughter or the newest worker here." "Daughter." The word moved through the space like a stone dropped into water. Gerald was suspended before he reached his office. HR was already on the phone. But none of that mattered to Maya. Because Daniel was standing 3 feet away, and his face was a door she had never seen close before. She was watching it try to decide what it was supposed to do. His voice, when it came, was very quiet. "You are the chairman's daughter." Yes, the word cost something. He let it settle. Then, "All this time you let me believe you were struggling. You let me believe the room was real. The life was real." "It was real," she said quickly. "Daniel." He raised one hand gently. "Just stop." His eyes were filling. Not with anger exactly, but with the specific pain that comes when something you trusted turns out to be something you were never given the full truth about. "You made me feel like I was seeing you," he said, "like I was one of the only people who had ever really looked at you." His voice broke just slightly. "But you were watching me the whole time. You were waiting to see what I would do. I never wanted to hurt you. I only wanted to know if someone could love me without the name, without the money." He looked at her steadily. "That was not your decision to make." A long silence. "I need space," he said. And then he turned and walked away. She stood in the October air and did not move for a very long time. The days that followed were long and heavy. She was back in her real life now, the house in Buckhead, the office on the 14th floor, meetings that included people who said her name with a reverence that meant nothing to her anymore. None of it brought peace. One evening, Victor sat beside her on the back terrace. "I pushed you into this test," he said quietly. "I thought it would protect you. I did not consider what it would cost the other person." Across the city, Daniel was struggling too. He replayed the moment at the entrance drive again and again. First came anger, clean and almost like relief, because at least it was something he could name. Then came the harder thing underneath it, the memory of every real moment they had shared, the lunch conversations, the mismatched chairs, the 2 cups of tea, the night she'd admitted she was scared of losing him. None of those moments had felt false. He knew that. He just didn't know what to do with knowing it. It was his sister Alina who finally said what he needed to hear, that people hide things for reasons about their pain, not your worth. That understanding why was different from excusing it, that he was the only one who could decide whether understanding was enough. 2 weeks later, Victor called Daniel himself. "She is going to be at my office at noon on Friday. I think she owes you something. I will not be there." Daniel arrived at 12:01. Maya was already there. She stood when he came in. Neither spoke, just the weight of 2 weeks filling the room. Victor's assistant stepped out quietly and closed the door. Maya moved first. "I'm sorry," she said. He looked at her. The anger was mostly gone. What remained was more complicated pain that had been turned over enough times it had begun to reveal its other side. "You should have trusted me. I know I thought I was protecting myself, but I only hurt you instead." He breathed. "I was so angry," he said, "but then I started thinking about every real thing that happened between us." He looked down, then back up. "You never tried to impress me. You never performed anything. You just sat across from me at a 2-burner stove and made tea." A pause. "You treated me like someone you genuinely cared about." Because I do, she said. I do care about you, Daniel. A silence. Then I forgive you. She felt something leave her body, something she had been holding without realizing how tightly. But do not ever test my heart like that again. She smiled, actually smiled for the first time in days. I promise. Several months passed. Maya stepped into her real role at her father's firm, its youngest sitting executive officer, and the announcement made 3 business publications. Daniel launched the financial literacy program he had always wanted to build for first-generation college students. Maya's firm became his first sponsor. They moved at the pace that felt right, unhurried and certain at the same time. One evening in late spring, Maya took Daniel to a rooftop garden in Buckhead that her father had planted when she was 7. Soft grass, simple lights strung between 4 posts, the city below them warm and alive, the air smelling faintly of jasmine, her mother's flowers still growing. They sat in silence for a while. Then Maya stood up slowly, put her hand in her jacket pocket, looked at him, and went down on one knee. He blinked. You loved me when you believed I had nothing, she said. You sat at a table that wobbled and drank tea from a mismatched mug and looked at me like I was someone worth knowing. There have been people in my life who came close after the parking lot of Hargrove and Lane, people who suddenly had more warmth for me once they knew the name, the title, the company. People who, if they had met me at that small table with the cracked window, would have made their excuses and left. Her voice stayed steady. You didn't see any of that. You sat across from me every day and noticed that I brought an umbrella when rain was only 30% likely. You saw me, not the heir to anything, not the executive, a person who was trying not to be seen, and you saw her anyway. She looked at him clearly. You made me feel something I had almost given up on feeling, safe. You made me feel safe, and I had forgotten what that felt like. She opened the small box. I cannot imagine walking through this life without you beside me, so I am asking you, will you marry me? Daniel looked at her for one long moment. His eyes were full. Maya, he said, and the way he said her name was its own answer before any words came. Yes, of course, yes. She put the ring on his finger. He pulled her up and held her. From the corner of the rooftop, her father raised a quiet glass, and the city below kept going, warm and entirely unaware that something small and important had just been made permanent. 6 months later, they were married on a Saturday afternoon, lilies and jasmine lining every table, her mother's flowers and his grandmother's flowers mixed together. At the back of the hall, Victor Osai stood near the entrance with a glass of champagne he hadn't touched, watching with the quiet satisfaction of a man watching something he had worried about for a long time finally become what it was always supposed to be. Maya had found what she had been searching for all along. Not the validation, not the proof that her name could protect her, not the confirmation that she was enough because of what she owned or what she ran or what she had built. Something far more valuable than any of that. A person who had looked at her in a small room with a cracked window and chosen to stay. And this time it was real. My wonderful viewers, true love is not proven by what someone knows about you, but by how they treat you when they believe you have nothing to offer. Here is the question I want to leave with you today, and I would genuinely love to read what you think. Was Maya wrong to hide her identity to test whether love was real? Or was she simply a person who had been hurt enough times that she deserved to find out? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. A more powerful story is coming in just a few days, so make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss it. If this story moved you, please like the video and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Thank you so much for watching.